They ruled from the shadows, built criminal empires worth billions, controlled governments, struck fear into cities, and evaded the law until it all came crashing down. Some were ruthless warlords, others masterminds of deception. But they all had one thing in common: absolute power. Until their fall, who were history's most notorious gangsters, and what made them so dangerous? Let's dive into the gripping true stories of crime, power, and betrayal. Stay with us if you want to learn why and how they finally fell. The roar of jazz filled smoky speakeasies. The clatter of Tommy guns echoed through the streets. The aroma of illegal liquor hung heavy in the air. This was Chicago during the alcohol prohibition era, when fortunes were made in the shadows. At the center of it all stood a man they called Scarface. Our number one, Al Capone. Capone's Chicago outfit was a well-oiled machine, fueled by bootlegging, gambling, and extortion. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, a calculated execution of 7 rivals, sent shockwaves through the nation. It was a message, etched in bullets and blood. Al Capone was untouchable. The US government took then a different approach. They went after his money. Capone, for all his cunning, made a fatal mistake, and you won't believe it. He neglected to pay his taxes. In 1931 he was charged with tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, the longest sentence ever given for that crime at the time. In 1934, he was transferred to Alcatraz, where isolation broke his control over Chicago's mob. Suffering from syphilis-induced dementia, Capone was released in 1939 and spent his final years in Florida, mentally deteriorated, believing he was still in power. He died in 1947, a powerless and forgotten man. The Andes Mountains, shrouded in mist and legend, became the breeding ground for an empire unlike any other. Here, our number two, Pablo Escobar, built his cocaine kingdom. From the slums of Medellin, he rose to become the world's richest drug lord. Escobar's Medellin cartel flooded the United States with cocaine, fueling a national epidemic. His motto, plata o plomo, silver or lead, summed up his philosophy: absolute power through any means necessary. Pablo Escobar fell due to his escalating violence, political miscalculations, and betrayal. After declaring war on the Colombian government, he was forced into a fake surrender, building his own luxury prison, La Catedral. When he escaped in 1992, the Colombian search bloc, US intelligence, and Los Pepes, a vigilante death squad, hunted him down. His empire crumbled, and after 17 months on the run, authorities tracked his location through a phone call. On December 2, 1993, he was shot and killed on a rooftop in Medellin. His death marked the end of the Medellin cartel and a shift in the global drug trade. The Sinaloa cartel found its leader in Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, a master of logistics and a Houdini of the drug world. Our number 3. El Chapo's empire was built on tunnels and technology. His cartel smuggled drugs beneath the US border through ingenious tunnels. He moved tons of cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. But it was his escapes that cemented his legend. From a maximum security prison in Mexico, he vanished, leaving behind a mile-long tunnel. He was recaptured only to escape again and went into hiding. His biggest mistake was contacting Hollywood to make a movie about his life, leading authorities to his location. In January 2016, Mexican Marines raided his hideout in Los Mochis, capturing him after a gunfight. Extradited to the US in 2017, he was convicted and sentenced to life in ADX Florence, America's most secure prison. El Chapo's reign ended. His cartel, however, still thrives. Number 4. Lucky Luciano, architect of the underworld. The 5 families of New York found their architect in Charles Luciano, known as Lucky. Born in Sicily, he rose through the ranks of the American Mafia. Luciano was a visionary who saw the chaos of the underworld and sought to impose order. He formed the Commission, a council of mafia families to maintain order and maximize profits. Under his leadership, the mafia flourished, but he fell due to prosecutor Thomas Dewey's relentless pursuit. In 1936, after years of avoiding conviction, Luciano was linked to a massive prostitution racket. When arrested, madams and prostitutes testified against him. Found guilty, he received 50 years in prison, a shocking sentence for a mafia boss. However, during World War II, he cut a deal with the US government, using his mafia ties to secure New York's ports. In 1946, his sentence was commuted in exchange for deportation to Italy, where he remained in exile until his death in 1962. He was a criminal who played the game of power with unmatched skill. His legacy shaped the American underworld for decades to come. Number 5. Dawood Ibrahim, the Ghost of Mumbai. The crowded streets of Mumbai became the hunting ground for Dawood Ibrahim. His D Company spread its tentacles across the globe, trafficking in drugs, weapons, and human misery. Ibrahim was ruthless, a master manipulator who controlled politicians, businessmen, and Bollywood stars. In 1993, Mumbai was rocked by a series of coordinated bombings. The blame fell on Dawood Ibrahim, transforming him from gangster to terrorist mastermind. After orchestrating serial blasts that killed 250 people, he fled India, reportedly finding refuge in Pakistan under government protection. Interpol issued a red notice, and both the US and India declared him a global terrorist, linking him to drug trafficking, arms smuggling, and terrorism. Despite being one of the world's most wanted criminals, the leader of D Company remains a fugitive. Number 6. Frank Lucas, the American gangster. The streets of Harlem became the setting for the rise of Frank Lucas. Lucas challenged the mafia's stranglehold on the heroin trade. He smuggled high-purity heroin, blue magic, from Vietnam inside coffins of dead US soldiers, bypassing the Italian mafia. His methods were as ingenious as they were macabre. Lucas was a ruthless criminal who enforced his will with violence. Frank Lucas was caught in 1975 after a joint DEA and NYPD investigation into his heroin empire. His downfall began when an undercover agent infiltrated his network and traced millions in drug profits to offshore accounts. In a massive raid, authorities seized over $500,000 in cash from his New Jersey mansion. Facing 70 years in prison, Lucas turned informant, exposing corrupt cops and rival dealers, reducing his sentence to 5 years. But he later returned to prison for further drug charges. Number 7. John Gotti, the Teflon Don. John Gotti, the Dapper Don, was a media darling. Gotti, the head of the Gambino crime family, was a throwback to a bygone era. Under his leadership, the Gambino family became the most powerful criminal organization in the United States. Gotti's flamboyant lifestyle made him a target. John Gotti was caught in 1990 due to FBI surveillance and betrayal from his underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano. The FBI had been wiretapping Gotti for years, but couldn't convict him due to jury tampering and witness intimidation. However, in 1989, the FBI secretly recorded Gotti bragging about murders and criticizing his associates, including Gravano. Realizing Gotti planned to blame him, Gravano flipped, testifying against Gotti in court. In 1992, Gotti was convicted of murder, racketeering, and extortion, and sentenced to life in prison, where he died in 2002 from cancer. Number 8. Meer Lansky, the mob's accountant. Meer Lansky wasn't a thug or a hitman. He was a financial wizard who understood the language of money. Lansky, the mob's accountant, was as dangerous as any triggerman. He laundered their ill-gotten gains through a complex web of casinos, banks, and offshore accounts. Lansky was a master strategist who always seemed to be one step ahead of the law. By the 1970s, U.S. authorities built a case against him for tax evasion and organized crime connections. In 1972, facing indictment, Lansky fled to Israel, seeking asylum under its law of return for Jewish immigrants. However, Israel denied his request and deported him back to the U.S. in 1973. Though tried for racketeering, Lansky's carefully hidden financial records and lack of direct evidence led to acquittal. He lived freely in Miami Beach until his death in 1983, a testament of his cunning. Number 9. Carlo Gambino, the Quiet Don. Carlo Gambino, the Don of Dons, understood the true nature of power. Gambino, the head of the Gambino crime family, ruled with an iron fist. He was a master strategist, always several moves ahead of his rivals. Under his leadership, the Gambino family became the most powerful mafia organization in the United States. Gambino believed in discretion, in operating from the shadows. Unlike flashy gangsters like John Gotti, Gambino avoided the spotlight, rarely speaking on the phone or making public appearances. Authorities tried to indict him multiple times, including for illegal gambling, extortion, and conspiracy, but he always evaded conviction due to lack of direct evidence. In 1970, He survived an attempted deportation to Italy. He remained free and in power until his death in 1976, dying peacefully at home of a heart attack. Number 10. Griselda Blanco, the Godmother. Griselda Blanco, known as the Godmother of Cocaine, was a pioneer in the Colombian drug trade. Blanco was a product of the slums of Medellin. She rose through the ranks of the Medellin cartel, her ambition and ruthlessness unmatched. She was a master of disguise, a chameleon who could blend in with the crowds. She fell due to her violent reputation, aging influence, and changing drug trade dynamics. After ruling Miami's cocaine empire in the 1970s to 80s, she was arrested in 1985 and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Upon release in 2004, she was deported to Colombia, where she lived in relative obscurity. However, on September 3, 2012, Blanco was assassinated in Medellin by a motorcycle hitman, ironically a method she had pioneered in her own criminal operations. 2 bullets to the head ended her reign, proving that even the most feared crime lords cannot escape their own legacy. These criminals, these architects of empires built on blood and money, left behind a legacy of violence and corruption. They were products of their time, but also individuals who made choices with devastating consequences. They were masters of their craft, whether it was smuggling drugs, laundering money, or silencing their enemies. They understood the levers of power, the allure of wealth, and the seductive nature of violence. But in the end, their empires crumbled, their reigns of terror brought to an end by their own ambition or the relentless pursuit of justice. Their stories serve as a reminder that the pursuit of power often comes at a steep price. They are cautionary tales, etched in blood and betrayal, a testament to the enduring power of greed and ambition.